Were you always Earthling Ed, or who were you before the world knows you as Earthling Ed?
Yeah, I definitely not the Earthling Ed I am now, at least. I remember when I first started advocating and speaking about, what we do to animals and the issue of veganism and plant-based diets and such. I was a little bit more, I guess you could use the word aggressive. I was a little bit
Mhm.
more kind of forthright. And I quickly realized that the manner in which I was talking to people was not effective. And you're absolutely right when you say that people just want to be heard and listened to. And we all feel that way, especially when it comes to divisive, large topics within society and culture, issues of morals, issues of personal conviction. These are the sorts of issues where we need to especially listen to people's viewpoints, because if we fail to understand each other, or we just talk past each other or shout past each other, we'll never reach any sense of commonality, or we'll never make progress in any direction. So when I first started, I remember I had this conversation with these two South African guys, and it was in Trafalgar Square in London. And the conversation kind of took a turn for the worst. And I was kind of being a little bit aggressive, with the language I was using. And they were clearly being very defensive. And afterwards, they were like, hey, we didn't like that. That wasn't okay. And I remember
Mhm.
reflecting on that afterwards and thinking, well, what am I trying to do here? If I'm saying that I'm a voice to try and help people understand their relationship with animals, and I want people to be encouraged to, be vegan and all these different things, and the people I'm speaking to are telling me afterwards, hey, you haven't done that, then clearly there's something going wrong here. So it caused me to, as you say, look into things like psychology and see how people work and how people respond, because it's very important, I think, especially when
Mhm.
it comes to conversations about big
But
topics.
anything really. People don't really always remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel, right? So it sometimes the message is irrelevant, but it's the messenger and how he delivers it or she delivers it, and that is what ultimately makes something effectively communicated, to where you aren't defensive and you have your guard down a little bit, or have enough um, reason or humility to listen to somebody else's opinion that may be different from yours. And I know we were speaking earlier that where I was raised in Mississippi, it isn't the most open-minded state. In California, it tends to be much more progressive, much more open-minded to other belief systems. And whenever I was growing up, I was constantly challenged with this belief system that I was raised in. So I was raised Hindu, and one of the core beliefs of Hinduism is ahimsa, which basically means to live a life of nonviolence through your thoughts, actions, and deeds. And any contribution to violence, such as eating or consuming animals, even though you may have not been the one to execute or you know, kill the animal, you are still contributing to it by consuming it, by paying for it, by keeping the cycle alive and well. So for a young adult or a kid, a child like myself, that concept is hard to communicate even today as an adult to others. So I was constantly found myself in this position defending myself. So to the point where I just didn't talk about it. I didn't want to stand out in any sort of way or defend my belief systems constantly. So I feel like that allowed me that perspective to have compassion for other people. And even because I felt so misunderstood, that I made it a point to really try to understand why somebody believes the things that they do, instead of immediately defending my beliefs and positioning myself as being morally superior or right or self-righteous, and trying to really understand other people so we can coexist.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we have to listen to people, because how can we properly respond to what people think and say if we haven't fully understood their argument or listened to them? I think, we do often fall into the trap of going into a discussion or a conversation, or, talking to someone who has different views to us, and we fall into the trap of caricaturing that person. And I think that's another reason why, being someone who speaks about veganism, the way that I come across is almost even more important than it would be for a normal conversation, because people have all these ideas of what being a vegan means. And
Mhm.
if in their head, as it is for many people, being a vegan means being, militant, extreme, overly emotional, lacking rational thought, all of these things that people sometimes perceive vegans to be because of things they've maybe seen online. If I fulfill that stereotype, it gives them even less reason to want to engage with what I'm saying. But if I can hopefully have a conversation with someone and I don't, tick the boxes of being this, overly emotional, militant, dogmatic, person, this ideologue that many people think vegans can be, I'm already kind of, I suppose, taking apart and disarming that person's, prejudices about being vegan.
Mm.
And if we can remove like the bad optics of veganism from those conversations, and then we can just talk about the actual issue. And that's where we as vegans, and those who advocate for plant-based living, that's where our strengths lie. Because when you look at these issues and you look at the harm that's caused personally, globally, to the animals as well through our diet choices and our lifestyle choices, I don't think anyone can deny the severity of what these choices can lead to. And I think when we can talk about those issues, listen to each other, and respectfully understand the viewpoints of others, not agree, but understand them, that's when we can reach effective dialogue and hopefully empower people to think about their own lifestyle choices differently.
And I feel that so many people also feel the pressure of being perfect. And especially that is reflected in the vegan community. You hear and see stories of maybe somebody that announces that they're vegan, and then the next story or post that they make has some type of non-vegan, maybe clothing or food that they're unaware of. They're in their process of transitioning, and yet instead of finding support from the vegan community, sometimes they can attack that person, and that can often lead to that person maybe stepping away from even considering living that way because of the lack of support even from the community itself. So I'm also a huge fan of just progress over perfection. Some people can go fully plant-based overnight. Some people have the conviction and the resources available to do that. And then other people, it requires a process. And we don't need a few perfect vegans to make a change. We need a lot of imperfect vegans to make a massive change, because systemically we're talking about, like you mentioned, we're all consumers. And if just one person decides to, eliminate animal products from their diet, it's going to make a small impact. But if a lot of people even just replace one meal from, the 3 to 5 meals that they eat per day with a vegan meal, collectively that makes a far larger impact. But not everybody can make that transition so easily. So
I think it's different strokes for different folks, isn't it? And you're right that I know many people who were like, I just realized one day what I was doing was wrong and swapped. And I met people like myself who went vegetarian first and then went vegan. And I think the overarching thing is always that notion of accountability, isn't it? When accountability can feel like an almost scary word, but I think it just means fundamentally just reflecting on our actions and making sure that we are in alignment with how we really feel about these things. And so I guess what I mean by that is people will always go about things slightly differently. Some people make that change overnight, some people won't. But I think whatever pursuit we're adopting based on the current situation we're in as individuals, accountability is important because it means that we don't become complacent. It means that we can avoid becoming, I suppose, not detached necessarily, but I suppose just removed from what we're thinking about. Because often what people can do is they can have this moment where they see everything that's happening, where they make this realization, they can go, I'm going to change everything. And then time has this funny way of helping us kind of almost distance ourselves from bad things. And so accountability, I think, just means reminding ourselves of why we're making this change. So if someone is making that step to vegetarianism and then veganism, they don't become complacent when they recognize that veganism is the full, I suppose, what's the word, realization of the values that they're understanding within themselves. So yeah, I think we have to be totally understanding of different people's perspectives, different people's positions in life. And I think rather than shame or call people out, if that's the right word, we have to just encourage self-accountability, and there's a way of doing that which is coming from a compassionate place, that is coming from a place of understanding and respect. And so if someone has just made that change to veganism and they post something online wearing a wool jacket, or they've got a down coat or whatever it is, it's not calling them out for being a hypocrite. It's saying, hey, you may not realize, but just so you know, this is made from this, which comes from here. It's just a matter of education, isn't it? So people, when they have that choice in the future, can decide what choice they want to make.